Anthony. I'm representing SUSI, which is the Student Universal Support of Ireland. Our process is actually very similar to Brendan, was it, before me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. It's very, very similar. We have the same kind of eligibility criteria. So we have the main eligibility criteria is residency, which is a minimum of 3 out of the last 5 years as a resident in Ireland. Now ours is slightly different, as it's 3 out of the 5 years. So potentially somebody could have been living here in 2015 and then for whatever reason left outside of Europe as well. Or we also take into account your previous residency in another European country. So if you are a legal resident in France, Italy, Spain, UK before arriving into Ireland, that residency will be counted towards your eligibility. Our next section of eligibility, which would mainly refer to yourselves, anybody in the asylum process or previously in the asylum process, must meet one of our nationality criteria. They are broken down into 7 different categories. So it's broken down into refugee status. So anybody who has been granted refugee status, or anybody who has been granted refugee status as a family reunification. So if their parent came to Ireland and was granted refugee status and then they were family reunified, that is also considered an eligible status under refugee. We also have programmed refugees, which are refugees that are brought into the country by the Irish government. That is also considered eligible. We have subsidiary protection. I'm sorry, my screen is just gone. There, I have this now, sorry. So then we have subsidiary protection. Anybody who is granted subsidiary protection, or the same again, anybody whose family member, parent was granted subsidiary protection and they were granted family reunification to come over. We also have EU treaty rights. So that is anybody who is granted permission to remain as the family member of a European citizen expressing their EU treaty rights within Ireland. We also have what's considered then is anybody whose parent is married to an Irish national. So if your mother or father has married an Irish national, that is an eligible nationality criteria. We also have anyone whose parent has been naturalized. So if you did not have an eligible permission to remain, but your parent has now been naturalized as an Irish citizen, that then entitles you as an eligible criteria. We also have permission to remain granted under Section 49 of the new International Protection Act. Now, this permission to remain only became eligible this year as it was written into our student grant scheme and student support act that we follow. So prior to this year, applicants actually refused and they would have had to rely on the pilot scheme in order to get funding, whereas this year now that nationality requirement is met by those applicants. So it's anybody who is granted under Section 49 of the new International Protection Act 2015, I think. Or it also refers to anybody who was granted humanitarian leave to remain prior to the Immigration Act 1999, which would be very, very slim cases at this time. Most people who would have been granted that permission to remain would be naturalized at this stage, as it's 20 years later now. We also, so that's all the nationality criteria. Sorry, I'm just trying to list it off and make sure I'm not missing anything. We also assess on income levels. So we have income thresholds. So our income thresholds do vary from PLC college to undergraduate college. So anybody who is attending a PLC 5 or a PLC 6 will be subject to an income max of 45,000. And this is for our maintenance grant. So for PLC, applicants are only eligible for a maintenance grant, as the fees are considered a small sum, which will be paid for by the applicant themselves. The monthly maintenance grants vary depending on the income threshold in which you fall under. Everything that I'm saying can be found on the SUSI website. The SUSI website is actually quite clear and concise, and you can also set up your account now on SUSI for next year if you want. It's you register all your details, and that way then when you're applying you only have to give the relevant details to the reference year that we're referring to. So other criteria that has to be met is previous ed and progression. So as Brendan stated earlier on, an applicant must be considered progressing in order to be eligible for SUSI funding. So that's anybody going from PLC 5 to PLC 6, PLC 6, higher Cert 6, higher Cert 6 and above. And you will not be eligible for funding at a level that you already hold an award for, or a level lower than that. So if you have a level 7 degree, you will not be eligible for a higher Cert 6 or any PLC colleges, but you will be eligible for a level 8 and above. Next year going forward, this year actually our postgraduate income thresholds are quite low. The income threshold at the moment for a postgraduate student is only 31,500, and that's the whole household income. So for a young person going to college, that is being assessed as a dependent student with both their parents' income. That is considered a very low income threshold. At the moment, there was talks and the government have extended that threshold. So now that threshold next year going forward will meet the undergraduate threshold. So for the whole household income, the income threshold will be 54,000, which is a big jump in the income threshold and a much needed increase into the threshold itself. We also consider maximum periods of funding. So for undergraduate courses in Ireland, we have different levels of maximum levels of funding. So for level 6, or for PLCs, you will obviously only get level 5 and level 6. Then for the undergraduate courses, they are actually separated into a level 6 and a level 7 is in its own category together. And then level 8, it's on its own as well. So over a level 6 and a 7, you will be only available for 4 years of a maximum period of funding. So if you complete a higher cert level 6 and you progress to a level 7, you will not be eligible for the full 3 years of the level 7. You would have to be advancing into year 2 of the level 7 to be awarded for level 2 and level 3 of the level 7. And if you then get the level 7 and go to a level 8, you'll be eligible for 4 years of the level 8, even if you start in year 1. Although if you have a level 7 degree, you can also just do a 1-year add-on to get your level 8, which you'll be eligible for as well. In assessing applications who have previous education in their home country, that information depends on the information that you can give to us. So when filling out the application, I would advise to give as much detail about the university, the course, and the length of time that was spent on it, just anything that we can use to research and ensure that we are categorizing that course into the same level course using the QQI website. If you have a level 5 or a level 6 from your home country, you will not be considered for funding for a level 5 or a 6 here. Again, you must be progressing, whether it's previous ed from Ireland or previous ed from another country. Now, I'll just touch back on how you will be assessed again. So it would be very similar to what Brendan was saying earlier. There are 3 categories in which you will be assessed. So anybody who was under 23 on the 1st of January of that year will have to be assessed as a dependent student. Now, there are also some exceptions to this rule, as we understand some people travel to this country unaccompanied. These people will be considered as exceptions to the dependency rule, but they will be examined by a specialist team within SUSI, and their case will be referred to that team and assessed, and the relevant documents can be provided from TUSLA, from social workers, or even from your home country. So if you have lost contact with a parent in your own country, but you have not been in the care of TUSLA in Ireland, you can help prove to us from documents from your home country that your relationship with the family member is estranged, and we can assess you on that basis. Also, if you were granted if you were granted refugee status, subsidiary protection, or if you were granted permission to remain under Section 3 of the Immigration Act 1999, we can automatically assess you as estranged, as you are granted permission to remain in your own right in this country, and therefore you're an exception to the dependency rule. And you can also be assessed as a mature dependent if you are over the age of 23 and still living with your parents. And I will emphasize the fact that a lot of people, if they are here in Ireland, or even Irish people that are just living with their grandparents, they will think that their grandparent is their legal guardian. and will apply under that basis. If you are applying with a legal guardian, this must be a court-appointed legal guardian. If you are living with a legal guardian but they're not actually court-appointed, you should apply as estranged. And then you can also apply as an independent student, which if you are over 23, and you will have to prove documentary evidence from the October of the year before and prior to entering the course that you were living independently, which will be required utility bills or letters from council.
Anthony, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm just babbling on, trying to get as much out as I can. Sorry.
And I wanted to allow you to talk, given that it is being recorded, so I don't want to be cutting people off before they have.
No, you're fine.
So if there's anything vital you want to finish with.
Just all of the information that I've been explaining is clearly stated on our SUSI website. The SUSI website also has an eligibility reckoner, which is a little system set up which will help you decide whether or not you will be eligible before even setting up an account or anything like that. So all our requirements and all are listed very clearly and concisely on the website, and it'll be easy enough to maneuver through as well.